This teaching provides evidence for the second Exodus. Our Father follows patterns, which includes prophecies. If a pattern is permissible within the bounds of His law, it can be repeated and likely will be, including prophecies. The appointed times and feasts of Yahuwah are prophetic patterns that can be repeated over and over. They are prophecies that can be fulfilled more than once. This is an attribute of our Father and His Word. The second Exodus will follow the pattern established by the first Exodus from Egypt. Yirmiyahu 23:7-8 says, "Therefore, behold, the days come, says Yahuwah, that they shall no more say, Yahuwah lives, which brought up the children of Yasharel out of the land of Egypt. But Yahuwah lives, which brought up and which led the seed of the house of Yasharel out of the north country and from all the countries where I have driven them, and they shall dwell in their own land." Yahuwah is making a parallel between the first Exodus and the second Exodus yet to come. Our Father likens the second Exodus to the first Exodus. Therefore, we can expect it to unfold just like the first Exodus in great detail. The first time, the house of Yasharel was freed from the bondage of Egypt. This time, the house of Yasharel will be freed from the bondage imposed by the current world governments, who are very oppressive. The prophet Moshe led them out of Egypt, and our Messiah will lead us out of this current world system. Messiah Yahusha is the prophet like Moshe mentioned in Devarim 18:18. It says, "I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto you, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him." This was also the perspective of Yahusha's disciples documented in Acts 3:22 and 7:17. This means that our Messiah will likely return and negotiate the release of the house of Yasharel just like the prophet Moshe. There will be plagues happening in succession just like the first Exodus, and the house of Yasharel will be protected just as they were in the first Exodus. They are sealed. Testimony in the law of Moshe says curses or plagues will be placed upon the nations. Devarim 30:7 says, "And Yahuwah your Elohim will put all these curses upon your enemies and on them that hate you, which persecuted you." This parallels the events mentioned in the Revelation. Devarim 30:1-10 is a prophecy discussing the regathering of the house of Yasharel spoken through the prophet Moshe. "And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon you, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before you, and you shall call them to mind among the nations where Yahuwah your Elohim has driven you." This is speaking of a time when the house of Yasharel has been scattered among the nations. This is after they settle in the land of promise in the distant future, which is in our day. This passage says that the people in the house of Yasharel will understand the blessing and the curse of the law, which is happening right now. Then the passage continues, "And you shall return to Yahuwah your Elohim, and shall hear and obey his voice according to all that I command you this day, you and your children, with all your heart and with all your soul." This is the aim of our website. We encourage people to Shema, to hear and obey the voice of our Father. The first two verses are telling us the things that must occur first. His word is law and must be fulfilled. Number 1, the house of Yasharel must be scattered throughout the earth. The exile of Yasharel occurred in 722 BCE, and the exile of Yehuda occurred in 586 BCE. Many are still exiled among the nations. This has been fulfilled. Number 2, the house of Yasharel, while scattered, must understand the blessings and curses of the law. This is happening right now with the awakening. This is being fulfilled. The third thing mentioned in this prophecy which must be fulfilled includes, number 3, the house of Yasharel must return to Yahuwah by hearing and obeying his voice, which is his word, with all of their heart and soul. According to our Messiah, the word includes the law of Moshe, the prophets, and the Tehillim, or the Psalms. This should be the writings of our focus right now. People are returning to him and beginning to hear and obey his voice. This is being fulfilled right now as we speak. When these things are fulfilled, the prophecy tells us that this is what happens next. that then Yahuwah your Elohim will turn your captivity and have compassion upon you, and will return and gather you from all the nations where Yahuwah your Elohim has scattered you. If any of yours be driven out to the outermost parts of heaven, from there will Yahuwah your Elohim gather you, and from there he will fetch you. This is Devarim 30, 1-4. This part of the prophecy has not been fulfilled. The regathering of the house of Yasharel has not been fulfilled yet. Most of the people living in the land today are atheists and have no faith in our Father, and many reject Yahushua ben David as our promised Messiah. The land is filled with people who do not hear and obey the voice of our Father. This prophecy in Devarim specifically states that his people will return to him and hear and obey his voice, which is his word, and then he will gather us back together. Our Father cannot operate against his own laws. If he removed his people from the land for not hearing and obeying his voice, why would he regather them in this state? According to his own word, he cannot regather them and bring them into their own land until they return to him. He removed them from the land for not hearing and obeying his voice. Why would he regather them if they are still not hearing and obeying his voice? Our Father will not regather his people until they hear and obey his voice. Our Father will gather his people together when they have returned to him and hear and obey his voice, which is his word. This means there will be a group of people scattered all over the world who will choose to hear and obey all of our Father's instructions in his word. They are preparing themselves to rule and reign with our Messiah. They will know the law and prophets. They are equipped to help our Messiah rule the earth. This prophecy is also in alignment with the following law in Devarim 28:13. And Yahuwah shall make you the head and not the tail, and you shall be above only, and you shall not be beneath, if you hear and obey the commandments of Yahuwah your Elohim, which I command you this day, to observe and to do them. This law allows Yahuwah to elevate the house of Yasharel as kings and queens over all the earth. They will replace the current leaders of the world. In Devarim 30, 1-4, the house of Yasharel returns to our Father by hearing and obeying his voice. We untie our Father's hands and give him the circumstances he needs to elevate us. However, our enemy wants to stay in power. What must they do to ensure they stay in power and control? They have to prevent the house of Yasharel from hearing and obeying the voice of Yahuwah. This is what the law says. Devarim 28:40-45 says, "The stranger that is within you shall get up above you very high, and you shall come down very low. He shall lend to you, and you shall not lend to him. He shall be the head, and you shall be the tail. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon you, and shall pursue you and overtake you till you be destroyed, because you did not hear and obey the voice of Yahuwah your Elohim, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded you." This law says that our enemy stays in power as long as the house of Yasharel is disobedient to the laws of our Father. Our enemy remains the head, and we remain the tail. They will stay in power and control. They believe the laws of Yahuwah and use them to their own advantage. What would our enemy do to prevent us from obeying? They would place our focus upon other ancient writings that create stumbling blocks by claiming these writings are the words of our Father. They would create counterfeit religious belief systems that mimic the faith of our Father. They would promote a Shabbat on a different day of the week. Our enemies would promote theories that undermine him, like the theory of evolution or the documentary hypothesis. These teachings are designed to create doubt in our minds. If we don't believe that he exists, then we will not believe his word. If we do not believe his word, we won't do what he says. If we don't do what he says, then we will remain the tail, and our enemy remains the head. They will do anything to prevent us from hearing and obeying our Father's instructions. We need to stop listening to them and start listening to our Father. The prophecies reveal that our enemy does not prevail. They will be brought low and demoted, if not utterly destroyed. There is no place for those who lead and teach people to disobey our Father's word. This next passage says only a remnant shall be saved in the second Exodus. Yeshayahu 11:11 says, "And it shall come to pass in that day that Adonai shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea." We have reviewed prophecies regarding the second Exodus from the prophets Yirmiyahu, the prophet Moshe, and the prophet Yeshayahu. Here is one from Yechezkel. "And I will bring you out from the people, and will gather you out of the countries wherein you are scattered, with a mighty hand, and with a stretched out arm, and with fury poured out. And I will bring you into the wilderness of the people, and there will I plead with you face to face, like as I pleaded with your fathers in the wilderness in the land of Egypt. So will I plead with you, says Adonai Yahuwah. And I will cause you to pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. And I will purge out from among you the rebels, and them that transgress against me. I will bring them forth out of the country where they sojourn, and they shall not enter into the land of Yasharel. And you shall know that I am Yahuwah." This is found in Yechezkel 20:34-38. People who transgress against him do not hear and obey the voice of Yahuwah. They will not enter the land. The text says that they will not enter the land of promise, which is the Garden of Eden. Yahushua is there. He is leading us to the promised land. The rebels will not be able to go through the gate. The second Exodus is going to occur on a much larger scale than the first Exodus, as the prophecies reveal. People will be entering the Garden of Eden and will receive eternal life in this Exodus from the nations. The first Exodus was a picture or pattern illustrating our Father's plan to restore mankind to their original station in the Garden of Eden. The goal of our Father is to restore his house back to the way it was in the very beginning. His word tells us his plan. His appointed times are not just typical holidays like we see in our world today, used to celebrate particular occasions. They describe his plan to restore mankind in his word, and we tell the story with our actions when we celebrate them. Since his appointed times are prophecies, we can expect him to fulfill them in every detail. For example, the first Exodus occurred in the spring of the year around Pesach, which is also known as Passover. We can expect the second Exodus to also occur during Pesach. Our Father is predictable because he follows patterns. Moshe arrived before the first Exodus, so we can expect Messiah Yahushua to arrive before the second Exodus. This would likely be on Yom Teruah, or Feast of Trumpets, in the preceding fall. Mark 13:32 kind of alludes to this particular holiday. "But of that day and hour knows no man, no, not the messengers which are in heaven, neither the Son, but only the Father." Yom Teruah is the only appointed time in which we cannot know the day and hour until it arrives. It occurs on the first day of the 7th month, which is dependent upon witnessing the first sliver of the waxing crescent moon. Testimony in Mark 13:32 indicates that Yahushua arrives on Yom Teruah. The shofar is sounded on Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, announcing the year of Yovel, or the Jubilee. Over the next 6 months until Pesach, the nations of the earth experienced the plagues, culminating in the death of the firstborn on the first day of unleavened bread. Our Messiah was resurrected on first fruits during the Feast of Matzah. It is highly likely this will be the time when the righteous are resurrected as well. Spring is the time of springing forth, which clearly represents the concept of a resurrection. The resurrection is a release from the bondage of death. This would definitely cause the first Exodus to pale in comparison to the second Exodus. Studying and celebrating the appointed times of Yahuwah Elohim helps us to understand his patterns and his ways. We see things unfold more clearly. The second Exodus will be a very big event that will always be remembered. There are so many details being fulfilled by the appointed times of Yahuwah right now. We are literally at the doors. Mature barley is the grain presented to Yahuwah during the Feast of Matzah in the spring. This is when the grass begins to sprout and grow prior to its maturation. When we see the barley growing, we know spring is near, as well as Pesach and the Feast of Matzah. The barley grain is the first to be harvested during our Father's appointed times. It represents the first resurrection from the dead. The awakening all over the world is telling us the barley is growing as spring is approaching. The barley matures very quickly. Then Pesach and the Feast of Matzah begin, when mature barley is presented to Yahuwah at first fruits. The awakening is a prelude to the resurrection. Our Messiah said the following in this regard. This is found in Mark 13:28 through 29. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you, in like manner, when you shall see these things come to pass, know that it is near, even at the doors. The barley is growing and ripening. The time is near. If you would like to learn more, please visit us at ourfathersway.com.